watching Inside the NBA, and I was listening to Charles, Kenny, and Shaq talk, and they were talking about tanking and how this is the only profession where when you do terrible on purpose, you are rewarded. And that is bullshit. You got these teams that are not going to make the playoffs. So instead of, finishing with pride, they're like, well, shit. Instead of being third or fourth from the last, let's really do a bad job to ensure that we get a higher pick, which means we'll get a better player in the draft, which means we could possibly do better next year. So literally losing gives us a better chance of winning next year. So you're rewarded for doing bad. And this is a problem that the NBA needs to address because it has become more prevalent in recent years, especially with the Victor Wembanyama draft. So in 2023, I was looking this up a bit here. Let's look it up. In 2023, Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, there was people were openly tanking. So I'm going to do some research. I had a note to look this up, write this here. They were tanking for him. Can you talk about this in detail and what happened? So let's just give you an example of people actively tanking. Yeah, it was defined by a blatant league-wide scramble to lose games for a chance at the 7-4 prospect described as the basketball alien. So basically, despite the obvious tanking, the NBA's flattened lottery odds meant that three worst teams all had identical, relatively low 14% chance at the number one pick. Was so concerned about the optics, racing to the bottom, that he publicly floated the idea of a European-style relegation to the G League as a deterrent, though he later admitted the league's business model couldn't support it. Not exactly sure what that means. But basically, teams were openly tanking so that they could, eventually get a great player. And this is still happening today. Teams are still doing this. And like I said, it's because they're freaking rewarded. So this is the thought. This is the idea. This is a way to fix tanking. You ready? All the teams that don't make the playoffs, I think it's 7 in the West, 7 in the East. Let me verify that. How many teams don't make the playoff? How many teams don't make NBA playoffs? Ten teams don't make the 16-team playoffs. 10 teams? Oh, I guess if you're including the play-in shit. But basically, all the teams that don't make the playoffs, we should have a lottery tournament. If we had a lottery tournament, all those teams that didn't make the playoffs have something to fight for, something to compete for, instead of just losing, just blatantly losing. Now they have to fight for their lives. And so it doesn't matter about tanking. Tanking is thrown out the window because they still have to compete, and the first place winner of that tournament is the team that gets the first pick. The loser in the championship of the lottery tournament gets second pick. Third, fourth, and runners up. And that way, you have losing teams that I would tune in to watch. I would love to see the Wizards versus the Nets battle it out, grind, dive for loose balls in hope, because they're competing for something. Their team's future is on the line. And so then there's that element of competition back. And I think more people would be tuning into that. Because right now, how many people are tuning into those regular season games of teams that are openly tanking? You know what I'm saying? So I want to look that up. I want to look up, I feel like I have a good idea here, and I just don't know if this is something that even exists. So we're going to pitch out our idea to Google Gemini, and we're going to see if this has been done before, or thought of at least, by NBA. So NBA teams openly tank if they are losing so they can get a higher pick in the draft. Has there ever been a proposal to have a lottery tournament so that instead of teams just losing in the regular season, increasing their odds to get the number one pick or get a high pick, that all the teams that don't make the playoffs compete in a tournament where the higher place that you finish gives you that higher pick in the draft. I think that would boost ratings and give these losing teams purpose and something to fight for. Not to mention the fact that a lot of those games at the end of a regular season, for all those losing teams, I imagine those games' ratings have to be decreased because everyone knows, the players and the fan base know that their team has nothing to fight for. So can you speak on these different points? I'm telling you, I think I got a good idea here. The entertaining as hell tournament proposal. The idea of a lottery tournament has circulated for years, most famously as the entertaining as hell tournament, popularized by Bill Simmons. Oh, shit. Oh, okay. Damn. All right, shout out to Bill Simmons. I didn't know he thought of this already. I was going to say, it's not like a crazy idea. It just seems like it'd make sense. It seems like that'd be something fun to do. Current reality, yeah, the NBA hasn't adopted a tournament yet, but as of March 2026, they are moving towards a flattened lottery system where the bottom 10 teams would have identical odds to kill the incentive for being the absolute worst. That's still lame, though. I mean, it's still up to chance. Give these teams something to fight for rather than leaving it up to chance. Because this is what this is the NBA is an entertainment business. And on the flip side, you have the ultimate competitors, the best athletes in the world competing, playing their favorite game. And it has to suck to be on one of those losing teams. And you feel like you're shit, even though you're literally a part of a subset of the best players in the world. So give them something to fight for. Instead of just throwing it out to chance with a flattened lottery, why not have them compete? I feel like that'd be such a good idea. The main reason the league resists a tournament is that it creates a rich get richer loop. The 9th or 10 best team. Now that is a concern. What about the teams that are close? The 9th or 10th best team in the league would likely crush the true basement teams, staying dominant while the actual bad teams never get to start. I don't understand that. 9th or 10th best team in the league? They would still be in the playoffs, so I don't understand what that means. One major alternative discusses the gold plan, where a team starts accumulating lottery points only after they are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. This forces teams to keep winning until the very end to secure a high pick. You're spot on about the late season slump. Current 2026 projections show that 8 to 10 teams effectively exit the competitive cycle after the All-Star break, causing a massive viewership dips in local markets. So yeah, the teams that are tanking, that are not going to make the playoffs, they see this dip, and it makes sense. No one wants to tune into a team that's losing. I get it. But I don't understand this ninth or the risk, the rich get richer. I want to clarify that before we move on, because that makes no bloody sense to me. What do you mean the 9th or 10th best team in the league would likely crush the true basement teams? The 9th or 10th best team in the league would effectively be in the playoffs, given that 16 teams make the NBA playoffs. So it would be the bottom teams, the bottom, 11th through 15th place teams in each side of the conference, East and West, that would make this lottery tournament. So how would they get crushed? Because all those bottom teams can fight and have a chance. I'm not sure what the hell they're talking about there. You're right that 16 teams technically make the playoffs, but since the 2020 it's talking about the play-ins. This means the true lottery, the teams that are done after the regular currently stand. I see. The 11th place Milwaukee Bucks are significantly more competitive than the 15th place Wizards. I do get that. So there is a concern. In a tournament for the number one pick, a team like the Bucks would likely sweep, essentially rewarding a mediocre team with a superstar while the basement teams stay bad forever. Critics of the tournament idea point out that the players on a losing team have no personal incentive to win a draft pick. A veteran on a 15th place team isn't going to die for loose balls just so the front office can draft a 19-year-old kid to eventually take his job. Damn, that's another good point. I mean, Yeah. But it's better than playing regular season games, right? Like, it's better than just ending your season. Don't you want to play for something, to compete for something? But I do get it. Yeah, you could be worried about taking your job. Huh. Revenue reality. If ratings for the bottom tier matchups are indeed lower, but the NBA is currently leaning toward draft booster proposals instead, giving teams extra ping pong balls for wins late in the season rather than a winner takes all tournament. All right, we're getting far down a rabbit hole. So maybe my idea of the lottery tournament isn't like, there's reasons why they're not doing it. Although I think it'd be fun as hell for the fans. And that's just it. What does it say? The biggest fear for GMs is that a generational talent like Victor Wembanyama could be decided by a single bad shooting night in a tournament rather than 82 game meritocracy of being the worst team. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess the fate of the NBA and like really good talent could all be based on, the refs or, a crazy game that was played. Huh. So it is more about just being fair, I guess. Damn. And this is why we look it up. That said, I still have some other ideas, and we're going to talk about them. So the idea behind that lottery tournament is that it's fun. It's competitive. The playoffs are going on right now. It's fun. It's competitive. Players are excited. Fans are excited. This is when the ratings and viewership are likely the highest because the regular season's over. The regular season is too long. 82 freaking games. It's insane. And there's also a major problem in the NBA is load management. You got the best players sitting out when they have back-to-backs. They go on the road. You might play in Charlotte one night, and then the next night you have Atlanta. Well, maybe like a LeBron who's 41. I don't think this happened to him particularly. Well, he doesn't play back-to-backs, I don't think, anymore. But that's the point, is that like now you have people paying premium tickets because you want to see their favorite players or taking their kids. Sure enough to find out LeBron, Giannis, Kawhi Leonard, Durant is not playing due to load management. And I get it. I get it from the player's perspective in the sense that they are making millions and millions of dollars and their body is literally their investment. It's their whole thing. That's their whole livelihood. And there is probably things out there saying that the more you play, the more wear and tear, the more likely and risk of injury. So if you don't have to risk it, and you can just say, I'm going to say I'm hurt and just rest, why not do it? Yeah, you could say for pride, for being a good person, but people are often driven by fear. And they want to protect what they got. And they may have tons of family and friends relying on them, and they're just trying to do the thing that all the people around them think is best for them and their family and their situation, which I know it's easy for us to say that, well, if I was making $20 million, I would do it. Well, all the people in this scenario that are making that money don't. So what makes you think that you're really that different if you were actually put in that situation? Anyway, so to solve this problem of load management and to make the regular season more fun, I think the NBA has actually stumbled upon a possible solution, and that is like the NBA Cup, where we have a tournament similar to like the playoffs to create that sense of competition. And to beat the load management, what if we did something like this? Have the regular season much, much shorter. Much shorter. 45 games. Instead of 82, what if we went down to 45? Now, with that, we could have series like baseball. Baseball, what they do is, let's look it up. I think they do in the regular season best of 3 or best of 5. But I think for the NBA, let's look it up real quick. For baseball, do they do best of 3 or best of 5 in the regular season series against other teams? Come on, bitch. Oh, they're not best of. Yes, I understand. Yeah, it's not best of. They play the series regardless. They basically play 3 to 4 games. Okay, 2 game sets. So I think that would create intrigue for the NBA. What if we have best of 3 series, not best of 3. We play 3 games or 2 games, and then you only play 15 teams a season. That will create intrigue because you only get to play certain teams once every 2 to 3 years. So that creates scarcity, and that's exactly the model the NFL has. The NFL generates the most revenue by far, and they play the least amount of games. Isn't that interesting? Can you give me the totals of the amount of games played in the NFL, the MLB, NBA, and NHL, and the amount of revenue generated by each league per season? Yeah, because like with the NFL, okay, here we go. Look at that. Look at that shit. This is what I'm saying. Games played. The total games played in the NFL in a single season is 272 compared to baseball's 2,400, NBA's 1,200, NHL's 1,300. And per team, 17, 162, 82, 82. And look at the money generated by the NFL. Almost double that of the NBA. And I think part of that is the scarcity. When you have fewer games, more people are tuning in. It feels more concrete, not concrete, more meaningful. Every game matters. Any given Sunday, baby. So, despite having the fewest games, it makes the most money. And so if we have fewer games in the NBA, even if we cut this in half, I know the league would be like, well, if we do that, then our model, we're going to not generate as much revenue. Well, what if you had these dudes rested, and so they're chomping at the bit to go play basketball? They're excited to go play because it's not a chore when you get time to rest. Not only do you get time to rest, it's bragging rights. All right, now you got the Lakers and the Knicks. They haven't played in 2 years, and they're going to have a 3-game series. And this is the regular season. So now it's like, all right, y'all won the series 2 years ago, but now let's see what happens. Now you have intrigue, you know? I just think this is a decent idea to create more interest in fans, but also increase the level of competition during the regular season. Let's see. What else is there to talk about? Yeah, rivalries feel real again. Familiarity is killing the mystique. Players can't hide because there's only 45 games. So every game matters. Every game matters. And I'm curious too. Are playoff ratings that much higher than regular season? Now, that's a good question. So this is all fun and dandy. It's a good idea that maybe if we create scarcity like the NFL, the level of competition will be higher. Players the all-stars and the stars are rested. They're more likely to be playing in the games rather than doing load management. But we kind of have some data already in the sense of the playoffs. You know, the stars come out for the playoffs. That's what they're playing for, and that's what fans are mostly intrigued. But I'm curious, is the data support that? Are ratings higher in the playoffs? How much higher are ratings, viewer ratings, and fan ratings for the NBA playoffs versus the regular season? Is it a noticeable difference? Massive playoff premium. The jump in viewership from the regular season to the playoffs is arguably the most dramatic in professional sports. While the 2025-26 regular season was a massive success, averaging 1.78 million viewers, playoffs typically see a 200 to 500% increase in audience size as the stakes rise. The play-in tournament, The Bridge, already shows this shift. Just last week, playing games on Prime Video averaged 2.69 million viewers, with the Warriors-Clippers peak of 3.51 million, nearly double the regular season average. So there you go. Once the first round starts, average games jump to 3 to 4 million, conference finals 6 to 8, NBA finals 12 to 15 million. So that tells you right there, there's a direct correlation to the stakes and the meaningfulness of the game, which often also correlates to the effort level by players and the amount of interest and intrigue by fans. And that, of course, Adam Silver, increases revenue. This just makes... I just don't understand why they wouldn't do this. To me, it seems like a great idea. So this is the plan. We're shortening games to 45 in a season. Creates more meaningful games. You have 2 to 3 games per series per team that you play against. You only play 15 teams a season. You only play 15 teams in the league per season. Create an intrigue, and then when the Lakers finally come to Atlanta, where I live, Lakers are my favorite team, it's exciting. Oh shit, the series is about to start with the Lakers. This hasn't happened since 2024, and they lost in overtime in the third game. See what I'm saying? All right. So that's that part. So that fixes the regular season. Create intrigue. Limit the load management, the stakes are higher. And we see that by the playoffs examples that viewers will more likely tune in if stakes are higher and scarcity is applied, as shown by the NFL. Now, for the game itself, NBA is notorious for being called weak, and it is soft. They travel. They are babies complaining to the referees. I ain't going to argue that. It's 100% true. So what if, this is another way to fix the NBA, let them be a little bit more physical. Another thing, too, is the replay reviews. How many, like those damn replay reviews where they go and look at the monitor for a guy getting a little, slap to the face while he was going up for a layup. He falls down. He makes a big thing. He goes like this. Am I bleeding? No, buddy, you're not bleeding. I feel like I am. And then they go and review it for half an hour. It takes the fun out of the game. It's lame. And I want to do some research on that. So the part of the game about toughness, about fouls, and reviews. Let's look this up. The NBA today is considered to be soft compared to the 80s and 90s. Are there genuinely more fouls called in today's game versus the 80s and 90s? The idea that more fouls are called today is actually a statistical illusion. Okay. Well, the types of fouls have changed. More perimeter whistles, fewer harder hits. The actual frequency of whistles has dropped significantly? Shit, I didn't know that. In the 1980s, teams averaged 25 fouls a game. In the 90s, 22. And now down to 19. Probably because they're so afraid to touch everyone. The fragile scoring. The perception of softness comes from free throw efficiency and spacing. In the 80s, the game was a crowded car crash in the paint. Today's shooters are so protected on the perimeter that a landing zone foul feels softer than a hard clothesline from the 90s, even if the total number of whistles is lower. We often lump the 80s and 90s together, but they were the opposite. The 80s were high scoring and fast, similar to now, while the 90s were a slowdown era with lowest pace in history. The 90s felt tougher because there were fewer possessions, making every hard foul feel more impactful. 2024, the NBA explicitly directed refs to stop rewarding non-basketball moves, like offensive players jumping into defenders. This change has actually made it harder to draw fouls now makes it harder to draw fouls now than it was just 3 to 4 years ago. You are 23% less likely to hear a whistle during an NBA game today than you were in 1984. The toughness of the past was as much about high volume hacking as it was about hard defense. Now, I was not expecting that, honestly. Damn. So it's less whistles. So then why does... let's ask that. Okay, so there's less fouls, but then why does the game feel like everyone's complaining? It feels like everyone's complaining to the referees. It feels like there's ticky-tack fouls that are being called. And is it maybe that the fouls that are being called still considered ticky-tack, so we could even have a lower number of fouls from the 80s if we weren't as soft and maybe weren't as stringent on the foul calls? Yeah, curious what this says. The whining versus whistles paradox. You've hit on the central frustration of modern fans. The game feels more interrupted by officiating, even though these are statistically fewer fouls. The gap between toughness of the past and the complaining of the present comes down to the nature of the contact. They were largely, in the 80s and 90s, bodying, hip checking, hard fouls. Today, it feels like marginal, which fans and players perceive as soft because it doesn't actually impede the player's movement, even if it's technically a foul by the book. Helicopter parenting? Current officiating focuses heavily on protecting freedom of movement. In the 90s, you could use a hand check to guide a player where you wanted them to go. Today, the same touch is an immediate whistle. Modern players know the refs are looking for these minor touch fouls, so they are incentivized to sell the contact. That's like what you see with the kind of thing. Yeah, Luka Doncic. Yeah, he's on my team, Lakers, who currently lead the league in scoring, but also criticized for his constant arch nemesis vibe with the refs. Spend significant portions of the game lobbying for calls that wouldn't have been considered fouls 30 years ago. One area of the game is actually less soft today is at the rim. Under modern verticality rules, defenders can hit a player in the air as long as they jump straight up. A play that was a foul in the 80s. This creates a weird inconsistency where you can get hammered at the rim without a whistle, but get called for a foul for barely touching someone's jersey at the three-point line. If today's refs called the 1989 Pistons Bulls game using 2026 ticky-tack standards, both teams would likely have their entire starting lineups fouled out by halftime. The softness isn't in the number of whistles, it's a standard of what constitutes a foul. I feel like they're all over the place here. They're saying like it's less calls in the 80s around the perimeter, more calls at the basket, which I don't know if I buy that. But then they say that the entire starting lineups would be fouled out in the 80s if those 2026 refs were refereeing the game. So I just think that we need to limit the reviews. When we do make a review, like go to the monitor, limit it, make the decision, and maybe not even have the referee do it. Maybe have just the people up at headquarters make the decision. Just get it right. Just get the call right. And that's the other thing. If a play happened 4 plays ago and they're like, well, we can't reverse the call now because we've already moved past it. Remove that rule. Why put rules in front of your rules? Get the damn call right. If there was a foul that happened a while back and it was blatant, go shoot free throws. Make it correct. That's like in the same way if it was a crime happened. And just because things have moved on and people have done other stuff and they finally figured out who did the crime, like, oh, sorry, that happened 2 years ago. We can't do anything about that now. Like, that's the same logic. If something committed was not allowed, that should be penalized whether or not time has continued on and they move past it. Get the call correct. So this section was all about changing the game. We want to remove ticky tack fouls, allow some hand checking, allow them to be aggressive with each other a bit, and then also limit the time reviewing. And if that means having NBA headquarters already looking at it, making the call, using AI, using like how tennis does, where they have cameras and metrics able to see where the ball was placed exactly. We can get rid of all this extra shenanigans of the refs trying to look at a monitor while fans are yelling at them, they're sweating, and they're overstimulated. Have a different group of people make that decision to speed the game back up, and then correct the calls. Whether it was 4 plays ago or not, have those same people at headquarters say, "Yo, that was a foul 5 plays ago. We need to get that free throw. But that player needs 2 free throws. That was a missed call. Let's correct it." And then that way you don't have those things where it's like, well, that game was thrown because they missed that call and this call. Like, way we get the game right. That's what people want. Get it right. Get it right. We don't care if it happened last play or 5 plays ago. Get it right. Next topic, one of the last ones. This will be something that is not that the players will hate, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Pay to play. You don't play, you don't get paid. In the same way in every other profession. If you ain't working, you don't get paid. Unless you're on you got PTO, paid time off. And if you're genuinely injured, if you're genuinely hurt, if you do sustain an injury, you get half pay. Just like we do working a 9 to 5 on short-term disability from our insurance. That's fair. Because what is their half pay? NBA players will say, "That's not fair. I can't only get paid half. How dare you? I only get $10 million a year." You know what I mean? Everyone else in the world, you don't work, you ain't getting paid, bitch. And these mofos, they sit on the sideline doing their load management, still making who knows how much for that one game. $400,000. The salary of a damn doctor for an entire year is what they get paid for not playing by saying their ankle hurts. So I want to look that up. What is the minimum salary right now in the NBA? And how much would they actually lose if they went half to half the money for going for not playing? So in the modern world, or in regular workers, we have to work to get paid. And if you can't work, you may be lucky enough to have short-term disability where you get paid maybe half. So I'm just curious, what is the NBA minimum salary right now? And if a player was injured, what would be their average half short-term disability salary actually look like? This would also close the load management loophole a bit. The concept of a salary works differently than a standard 9 to 5. Yeah. Oh, move this over just a bit. Come on. There we go. Meaning if a player gets injured on the court, they don't move to a half pay. They usually get 100% of their check. Yeah. For a rookie, the minimum the starting salary is $1.2 million. For a veteran with 10 years experience, the minimum jumps to $3.5 million. So if you're a rookie, if you're 19 years old, you don't know shit, you have no job experience at all, your minimum wage is $1.2 million. Now I want to look something else up real quick. Whoops, not that button. What is the average salary of a brain surgeon in the United States? $723 to $1 million. So an NBA rookie, a 19-year-old kid, really good at basketball, makes more than the average brain surgeon. To put it into perspective, if players are injured, they still are paid their full salary by the team. However, teams often carry temporary total disability insurance on their top 5 highest players. After a waiting period of around 41 missed games, the insurance company starts reimbursing the team for about 80% of the player's salary, but the player's check remains the same. Now, they have a career ending. No, we're not talking about that. Regular worker comparison is most accurate for two-way players. They earn a flat rate of $636,000, but their guarantees are much lower. If they get waived while injured, they might only walk away with their guaranteed portion, which could be as low as $85,000. Yeah, right. I mean, that's a very low number. Those are the guys that bounce around from the G League and the NBA. We're not talking about those guys. If an average player made $11 million, forced to go part-time, why do I keep saying part-time? To their disability plan, they would still be making $5.5 million to sit on the couch. Yeah. So, obviously, the players would fight hard for this, against this. They would, of course, not want this. Why would anyone want to be paid less when you can sit there and do nothing? But this would make players want to play. There would be a deeper desire and hunger to go out there because you got to earn your check. It'd be a renewed sense of responsibility in remembering that, like, oh, shit, I'm not entitled to these millions of dollars. And everybody loves me and fans love me and I deserve this. I actually do have to earn my check. And that's to go out there and play basketball, whether I feel like it or not. I think that would, while of course players wouldn't like that, when you're used to a high lifestyle and to a high sense of entitlement, anything lower than that is jarring, and it feels like you don't deserve, like I'm better than that, and I don't deserve that kind of treatment. But to bring them down to reality, and just if they were forced to do that, while they would bitch, while they would be upset, I promise you, they wouldn't quit their job and go work at Staples, go work at Best Buy, go, do something else. Now, they may be able to work and do financial opportunities and become entrepreneurs because of the money that they've already made from playing a sport. But if they did not have access to those funds by playing basketball, they'd be like me and you, having to figure it out on what to do. And the average basketball player has been pretty much working on their basketball skills through their career. And so they 100% would be wanting to continue to play basketball. Even if this rule were in place and they would fight, they would still play. Like, God damn it. Well, all right. I'm still going to play. Still making millions. You just have to work to get paid. Now, we have talked about a good amount of things. We talked about the lottery tournament. And how might that not be a idea that we could actually do. We've talked about creating scarcity, having less games, creating more intrigue throughout the year, which would prevent load management issues and teams coasting and people taking the night off because there's no longer 82 games. We shorten it pretty much by half. Players are chomping at the bit to go play basketball because they do get a good bit of break and time in between and rest so that they are excited and want to get back out there. And they want to get back out there because they have to play to get paid. And then while they're on the floor, we're going to make it so that the ticky tack fouls are not as called. We're going to make it so that when we are going to have to review a play, that people in the headquarters, the HQ, are going to look at that so that it doesn't take any more extra time out of the game to keep it more entertaining, keep it flowing. Because after all, if you want that entertainment, you want people to keep watching. They don't like when you have to go to the review booth and review the same play for an hour and a half. So there we go. We're creating more entertainment, more value by doing that. What else? No more ticky tack fouls. Shorten the reviews. Getting the call right. Just get it right. If it happened 8 plays ago, who gives a shit? Just get the damn call right. So no more complaining about referees. We get the call right. Well, they'll still be complaining about referees, I'm sure. No doubt about that. Pay to play. Now, the last part. This likely, of course, will never happen. Teams are not going to, the NBA isn't going to take a big leap like this, which would potentially reduce their overall revenue. It's too big of a risk. A multi-billion-dollar organization must feed their people, must feed the organization and keep it growing. It's a big life force that's created, a global entertainment business, the National Basketball Association, and they don't want to jeopardize this huge thing that they have in place on the off chance that it makes more money in the end when their current formula, it's working. It is working, although there is complaints, they're still making more money than ever. That said, I had Google run a simulation and took all these ideas that we just talked about and go through and see what it would possibly be like if all these were done. And how would that look? Would it make them more money, or would they make a lot less? What would happen? So I had this simulation done, and I honestly haven't really read it. And I don't want to read the whole thing, honestly. I kind of just want a synopsis of this real quick. So I put it into a Google Doc. And from here, well, let's see. There's usually like a summary at the conclusion. Scenarios. Side-by-side comparison. So currently, the league makes a total of 14.25 with this scenario of everything I just talked about conservatively. So they would possibly make less on a conservative basis. But even with a moderate scenario, it could be pretty close. Maybe less, but could be close. And then, of course, the optimistic scenario is that it could potentially make more. Based on historical precedent, whoops, you can't see that. That's cut off. Hold on. Let me back out of that. Can you see all that? Pretty much. Based on historical precedent from other sports and the NBA's own recent experiments, the moderate scenario is the most likely outcome of such a radical structural overhaul. The primary lesson from the 2011 lockout is that the NBA's fan base is remarkably resilient to schedule disruptions if the product remains compelling. A 66-game season in 2011 resulted in only a 10% decline in revenue, proving that fans will pay a premium for a condensed, high-urgency schedule. Furthermore, the 71% viewership increase for the NBA Cup proves that the eventization of the regular season works, making it more of an event, have less games, just like the NFL. However, the optimistic scenario assumes a level of price elasticity and broader broadcast flexibility that may not exist in a weakening linear TV market. The most significant hurdle is not the fans or the sponsors, but the players. A pay-to-play model would necessitate a complete dismantling of the current CBA, like the players. They have like a players group. I forget what it's called. Yeah, they would boycott, likely leading to a multi-year labor war that could destroy more value than the overhaul creates. Ultimately, the NBA is likely to move toward a moderate version of this proposal over the next decade. Perhaps not a drop to 45 games immediately, but a gradual reduction towards 60 games with an expanded tournament structure. Really? So they're headed to something like this? The data suggests that the league can thrive with fewer games, provided those games are perceived as must-see events rather than a nightly inventory. The transition from a volume-based league to a scarcity-based league is the only path toward matching the per-game efficiency of the NFL and securing the league's financial future in a post-linear world. I didn't know that. So even though I did all this research and it had all these different scenarios of what we were going to do, and it's probably more likely that it would be conservative to moderate, the NBA is apparently already thinking thinking about this stuff. And of course they are. They got tons of smart people. And I'm just some dipshit over here in Atlanta, using my free time to talk about it. But that's interesting. I kind of want to look that up now, and look up the idea of the NBA already doing this. Yo, who is just backing up into my driveway fully right now? It might be an Amazon person, but the balls on people to do a full reverse, back up fully into the driveway to deliver a package, I'm assuming. Hold on. Yeah, they're dropping stuff off. I would never do that. A full reverse back into the driveway. Park the car like you live here. Oh, shit. I accidentally got to the doorbell camera and it was like having audio. I hope they didn't hear me. Anyway, I want to look that up. All right, last thing here. Where the fuck? Where's the microphone? Where the hell did it go? Oh, maybe you have to start with it. There it is. So I ran a simulation about having a updated NBA season where there was less games, and essentially the research showed that apparently the NBA is thinking about doing this in the future, going down to possibly 60 games and having more tournament style to kind of create a scarcity and to create more intrigue and competition and reduce load management and all of these factors. Is that true? Question mark. Is the NBA likely going to go to a more non-linear model and to more eventize games in the league in the regular season? That so often now is kind of just going through the motions. All right, I'm almost done. The 82-game grind versus the event-style future. The NBA is actively trying to eventize the calendar to fix the going through the motions problem, but a drop to 60 games remains a radical outlier rather than a firm plan. It just said in the other thing, you can't trust AI, folks. To combat load management, the league now requires players 65 games. The success of the NBA Cup, the in-season tournament, and the play-in proves the league strategy is moving towards non-linear, high-stakes clusters rather than one long marathon. Yes. The biggest hurdle of a 60-game season is local TV revenue and gate receipts. Current internal discussions for a shorter season usually hover around 78. How is to balance rest with the massive financial loss of cutting to 22? 2026, the league is eventizing the All-Star by moving to a 3-round robin. Yeah, and that didn't work very well. All right, so we don't know. The truth is we don't know. I think it's a good idea. I think we should do it. I think we just fix the NBA. But like we said, probably won't happen. Too much money is on the line. And when you have a big business like this, you don't necessarily do what could be best. You are driven by profit and revenue. Like any other big business, it gets to the point where it's become its own entity and you have so many mouths to feed and so much expectation, and it's a product of just the capitalistic Western economics that we are in, that more is better, and that any reduction in revenue means the company is not doing well. Although I think fans and players would benefit from this idea, this concept long term, it's just not a risk that people in charge of the moolah are going to be willing to take. Nevertheless, I think this would fix the NBA. All right, y'all. Peace.